much for joining us for this maiden edition of the Cordros Wealth Summit. I have no doubt it's going to be time well spent. If you like, my role today is to be your financial GPS as we navigate the twists and turns of financial opportunities and wealth as a broad subject. All right, so we have quite a lot on the agenda today. And by a lot, I mean a lot of information that we can all use. I am personally delighted to be here. I look forward to learning. I have already interacted with some of the speakers, and I can assure you that there's so much to gain from this interaction. The subject of wealth obviously is something that impacts every person in one way or the other. And so we're going to really dissect that subject as we proceed today. So we're going to look at everything from the Nigerian financial landscape, the economy, the new government. What does all of that mean for your wealth? We're going to unpack that. We have brilliant speakers to do justice to that. And then I look forward to this particular presentation on 5 actionable steps to enhance your wealth management journey. We're delighted to have our speaker join us. He has flown in all the way from Switzerland to give us some perspective. I'm going to try and save some time and let us get right into it. And as we proceed, I'll be doing more introduction. So again, you're all very welcome. Fasten your seatbelt. I think it's going to be a great ride. On that note, just to help us set the tone to deliver some opening remarks, I'd like to now welcome, and I would appreciate if you give him a round of applause as he steps forward, the Managing Director of Cordros Asset Management. Please welcome with an applause, Mr. Bola Aino.
Good morning, everybody, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining us today. I'm so expectant that this event is going to be so enriching, and we intend to shape the future of wealth management in conversations today. First, I'd like to thank our clients that have been with us for the years, for your dedication and your patronage. And of course, I'd like to thank our chairman for the immense support, commitment, and faith that you had in us. Ever since we mentioned we're going to have the summits, I say thank you, sir. Engineer Stars will say as well. So today, there are a lot of complexities in the world, and I'm sure you agree with me that investors, client operators are looking for solutions. They're not sure where to turn to, and I believe conversations today is going to help shape direction on what to do. If you look at the global space, for instance, a lot of macroeconomic headwinds, high interest rates, difficult macroeconomic terrain. And of course, I believe that as we begin to have the conversation today, things are going to be in better perspective. Also, the local space as well, you'll agree with me that a lot of people are asking for clarity regarding the effects. People are asking for clarity regarding subsidy. And I believe conversations today will help bring a lot of clarity. So my assignment here is not long, very brief. It's just to welcome everybody. And just to let you know that fasten your seatbelt, sit down, relax as we take you on this future of wealth. So thank you, everybody, and welcome.
Next up, we're going to invite to also deliver some remarks as he begins to set the tone for a lot more enriching conversations later on. Bola has already alluded to him in his brief remarks, so I will just get right into welcoming to deliver some remarks on wealth management and family legacy. Please welcome the chairman of Cordros Capital, Engineer Charles Osezwa.
Wale, thank you very much. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I think my job is short like Bola, brief, except it's a little bit two-dimensional. One is to say welcome, and the other one is to make a few remarks. But what do I want to start with? I think you say congratulations and welcome. Congratulations because you are here. Preparing for this summit, Wale, now the other Wale, my MD, told me, and I quote, this summit It's exclusive, and it is aimed at a class of professionals, entrepreneurs, and retirees. I had to add my group that have distinguished themselves in their chosen fields, who deserve to be celebrated for what they have done for their families and for the nation. Well, I believe I quoted you correctly. So that you are here today for me, really, is to say, one way or the other, you've created a lot of wealth, or you have the potential for joining the Billionaires Club. That was the spec I was given. Now, if I'm wrong, then let's blame Wale. So, that's why I congratulated everybody that is in this room for the successes, for your success in creating wealth, the success in your business, and indeed, for taking out the time to come here today to listen to experts and to participate and gain insight into the future of wealth. But commenting, you remember that Wale, now I want to say Wale again, Bola have said, I'm going to comment on the subject of wealth management and future family legacy. Before I do that, I want to make a few remarks. I mean, Cordros, I must say, continues to position itself as a firm of repute. And again, your presence is an attestation. And I'm glad to be part of that. But this Cordros Wealth Summit, I want to reemphasize, is an annual event which essentially is to serve as an exceptional platform for stakeholders in the wealth management industry to connect and give valuable insight. The summit aims to shape the future of wealth management by exploring various topics and facilitating meaningful conversations. And that is precisely, I re-emphasize, the reason for the title or the theme of our conference, the future of wealth. You know, as professionals, businessmen, and entrepreneurs, I'm sure we all agree that wealth must have a future. Do we? Wealth must have a future. And that for me is to say that wealth goes beyond you and indeed all of us here. It has to be transgenerational. And that is really come to this or the future of wealth. But when we start to talk about transgenerational transfers, we are now talking about family wealth. And for me, if it's a family wealth, we have to look at it, therefore, create that environment that enables us to effect that transfer. Those of you who know me well, you know I'm not a financial expert. We have selected a number of top-notch financial experts. He's here already. A lot of them are here in the room to do justice to what it means. They're going to explore and share with us options and opportunities. Experts to discuss how we should manage or how we should prepare that future. And I hope indeed that we all take advantage of the summit and that at the end of it all, we all have clarity on what the best option for our family wealth, how we intend to build our legacy, if you like, how to realize the vision we have for our family. Which indeed brings me to the subject of legacy, family wealth or managing family wealth and a legacy. You know, each time I talk, I use the word vision quite frequently. Each time I talk about vision, I tell people I find a convergence with legacy. But when I talk about vision with professionals, what I get often is a pushback. What is that? We are talking about family wealth. They instead go into building what I'll say watertight financial structure to manage their estates. And I always say, that's a good move. Help us achieve our vision. No, indeed, build a legacy. What I tell you is this: achieving the family vision is more than watertight financial structure. It requires deliberate application of principles, just like you and I do in our business lives. That's what we do every day. That's what we have gotten used to. But only in applying those same principles can we achieve the vision, our financial vision, and build our legacy. For me, it became clearer when I transited from the business sector, I like to say, to what I would say the social career side. Working at the Institute of Work and Family Integration, an institute we created so many years ago, in collaboration with the Lagos Business School, we had a time and opportunity to talk to a lot of businessmen and professionals. And a number of things become very clear. A lot of us, let me say a number of us, in creating wealth, we spend less time with the family. Consequently, a lot of us are not able to transfer those values that had made us successful in our businesses, in creating the wealth that we want to transfer. So the receivers are not ready to receive it. And that is something that has become very clear. Yes, we have built a comfortable home environment. We have created an inheritance. But as you and I agreed at the onset, wealth must be transferable. So what do we see? We see again and again the vision or the wealth creator being jettisoned, if you like, becomes unsustainable. Every wealth creator has a vision, invariably, and wants to build a legacy. However, we find a divergence in values. Well, I'm sure you've seen it, we've read about it. Many successful families, and they spend months, years, in the courtrooms, trying to decipher the vision. That is what siblings fight over. And in the process, the legacy you have worked so hard to build is destroyed. Well, to overcome this challenge, I want to emphasize we need a principle-centered approach in the management and the transfer of wealth. And I can tell you this. At times, doing that can be very challenging. Indeed, it can be messy. I have been there. I told Banogo, well, I'm an old man. That's why I recognize the old man especially in this. I have been there, and it can be messy. To give you some insight, let me talk about 3 principles you may want to consider in planning the future of your wealth. To have a vision, be clear on your family vision and making it known to members of your family is very important. I don't think there's a lot of debate on that. So what it helps us to do immediately is that we can start to look from the end and work back. What does it take? But the sooner you let the members of the family know, the better. So you can start a dialogue and a discussion. And what I find in my case, gradually you will attract some members to start that discussion. And ultimately, everybody will get involved in charting your roadmap to achieving your vision. Anyway, as I was saying, so we can bring the members in that dialogue. What I find is that as the process continues, you start to hear siblings talking about their capability and who could do what. Yes, there will be some resistance, but we're at the onset. But ultimately, there will be some alignment because it's everybody coming together ultimately. I mean, for those of you who are familiar with the 7 Habits, Steve Covey, remember what he said about family vision. And I quote, "A combined, unified expression from all members of what your family is all about. What it is you want to do and be, and the principles you have chosen to govern your family life." Well, you know, this is what you and I do every day in our offices. We bring our management together, and again, we repeat the same thing, essentially, with good consultants like our speaker here, to guide us. So we have buy-in and we mobilize the management. We are building the team. But the same thing we need to do in the family, but with clarity on vision, so we are pulling the same direction. Secondly, I would say to harness the synergy in the family. Harnessing the synergy that exists between the individuals in our family is a principle-centered decision, which essentially is about interdependency. We always say is greater than the sum of the parts. It's true in this, and it's more relevant indeed in the family. There were biases and issues. Who should lead? Is the senior son's responsibility to lead, not the second? But at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. It's about creating a winning team, a win-win scenario. And I think the more they appreciated it, the better or the easier it was for people to start to align with that vision, the ultimate goal, because it was better for all of us as a family to align, to take advantage of our inherent strengths, and to work together, to ensure that the vision we have and the roadmap we have agreed is meticulously followed so that wealth can be transferred. I must say this. When we started this process, I told the ultimate inheritors, I always say I had a council of owners. And I had to deal with them as a council of owners. And I tell you this, I made presentations from presentations. Like I was talking not to my shareholders, but to my board of shareholders. I don't know whether it makes a lot of difference. I mean, they were like executives who indeed could fire me. I think I told Wale they fired me, actually. But none of them should feel obliged to work in the group. They were at liberty not to, but their interest was always assured. That they will find out after I'm gone. But let's agree on the principle. And that's worked for me. So they made their decision freely, and they played the role they've chosen to play based on what they've come to agree would work. The third and last point I want to mention, or principle, is to build character through philanthropy. I mean, very often when I say this, people say, but wait a minute, what has that got to do with creating and managing wealth? And I say a lot. It is human nature to want to help the needy. First principle. We want to leave a mark. Always we want to say, I was there. For some of us, yes, I'm sure you've left, I was there in several places. But now
time to make sure it's there after you are gone. But what is more important for me is that family philanthropy makes us all more human. And this, for me, is critical for the future of wealth. It helps our children to grow in the spirit of service. I mean, it enhances their leadership quality. As they participate, they appreciate their capabilities and capacities. It helps them to also be very involved in building what I call the future family identity, and creating that legacy. Working with your children, I dare say, will help them to learn firsthand the principles of hard work well done, building friendship and networking, and all those qualities that have enabled you to succeed in your business. They never had the opportunities to work with you. But now, through projects like this, you can be more deliberate, and then they see you firsthand. I was told many years ago, he's a senator. You're distinguished. I bow and tremble. I was going to say, many years ago, I was told the best trained generals are those who work with generals. I'm quoting the Kramer Arthur Anderson, who was one of my mentors growing up. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, to conclude, let me reemphasize the point that in managing your wealth and building your future legacy or family legacy, the principles that work for business also work in the family. I note there are a few people of my generation here, because the question often, how do I now engage my kids, who are indeed parents in their own rights? I have been there. And the story I told you is my reality. They're all grown up. They have their families. But even then, and a center, everybody can see. It demands, of course, openness. It demands listening. It demands from us a lot of dialogue, but it works. For the younger ones, yes, it's much easier, because, and when I say the younger one, not the retirees here, those whose kids are still young, it's easier, because they have not formed the habits yet. Nor do they don't have the belief system that will enable them to resist your value propositions. But whichever stage we are in life, irrespective of their ages, in transferring our wealth, we need to transfer it. We need to define use and the culture we would like to see, even among the older ones. And I tell you, those same principles will sustain your legacy. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening, and I wish you a fruitful deliberation. Enjoy your summit. Thank you.
Address. Please, can we put our hands together again for him? I think there was so much to take away from that. I mean, for me, one of the biggest issues that he raised was vision for wealth. Sometimes we don't think about that. Do we have the vision for our wealth in our family, as individuals? I recently found out that the American poet, author Mark Twain actually did something very interesting. And I'm sure we'll be talking about this later on in terms of the power of estate planning tools that we have. I was told that he put in his will that no one has the right to write an autobiography on him until 100 years after he's passed. And guess what? Nobody could move. So I would like to now help us set the tone for even further discussions as I invite our next speaker. So it's my distinct pleasure, as many would say, to invite the founder, as you can see on the screen, and CEO of RTC Advisory Services. Please, ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Mr. Opeyemi Agbaje.
Interestingly, I had a different description of myself in the slides that I prepared, because I think my number one qualification to be here is that about 16, 15 years ago, I conducted take-off strategy sessions for a startup called Cordros. And then Wale and his colleagues were gracious enough to invite me into the company, I think twice a year for the first decade. So we did half-year strategy reviews, and we did the next year, and we did another half-year, we did the next year. And I think that we must have done a good job between Wale and the team and their strategy consultants. So the topic, Cordros, is demo. They gave me the topic, even though the content belongs to me. But the imagery they convene, they communicate in that topic is of a boxing fight between Nigeria and your wealth. Versus, right? So there are forces, they suggest, it's them, that there are forces in Nigeria that if you lose, will destroy your wealth. And that because you have to win, that's why you're at a meeting like this. There's a contest going on between the sustenance and preservation of your wealth and the context of Nigeria. That's what that topic suggests. And it's not an unrealistic context in which to understand the challenges of wealth management and preservation in Nigeria. But because I think people have enough stress already around wealth and money and politics and policy, so I decided to adopt a conversational approach in this engagement. So I redefined, just to be able to communicate in a lighter and more easily understood manner, I redefined the question, or amplified perhaps, to what policy and economic management has been doing to your wealth. In terms of longitude, I said 8 years, because it represents a phase of policy and management in terms of Nigeria. What is it currently doing in the last 6 weeks plus? And what is it likely to do in the near future? Perhaps the next 4 years or 8 years. And what might you do about it? Perhaps there may be some ideas, most of which will come from the wealth management experts that you listen to after me. But perhaps I can put a macro context in terms of what I think you might be able to do about it. So let's take the first part of the question. What did policy and economic management do to you and your wealth in the last 8 years? 1, it froze economic growth and caused 2 recessions. I think we all know that. Next slide. And that's the 2 recessions And that's the fact that you've not had economic growth above 3%, more or less from 2015. Right? And in terms of GDP per cap, that's, if you take a longer term from 1999, which represents another era, 1999 today, Nigeria's civilian era, you would find very clearly that the last 8 years is remarkable in terms of the lack of growth. When we started in 1999, you can see under Obasanjo, growth speed up rapidly, 15.8%, averaging later as GDP growth settled down after the initial low base, high growth, to an average of 6-7%. The average change in 2015. Initially for reasons other than policy, global oil prices, but clearly policy, a vacuum, sometimes a vacuum in it, at other times wrong policies, then create the new average in which we struggle to grow our economy at 2%, minus 2%, or thereabout. Next slide. And then if you look at GDP per capita, which is, I know many of us know a little bit about economics, so it's some average, but we know in reality, wealth is not averagely distributed. Some people here may have billions, some may have thousands, but just to get a sense. So you can see that from 1999, we were improving the average wealth of Nigerians consistently and rapidly. And then we started, from 2014, we started destroying average wealth. Graphs are good because they are not debatable. They speak. Next slide. Because I also have of showing you where Nigeria is in 2023, these are your sectors. And so you can see highest performing there, finance and reference. And you can see information and communication technology at 10.32, which is the real star of the Nigerian economy in terms of consistency of growth and so those are the outstanding sectors in terms of growth. Every other thing is marginal. 2, 3, 1, 0. Right? And under this question. Next slide. That's the structure of Nigerian productivity, GDP. And so you see your largest sectors are agriculture, which is performing suboptimally, manufacturing, which is performing suboptimally, which is the largely oil and gas and solid minerals, which is now down to 8% of GDP, trade, which is down to 15% of GDP, and that one that I call the star of the Nigerian economy, information and communication, which is now 17% of the economy. I remember that in 1999, that 17 was less than 1%. Was less than 1%. So that tells us what economic reforms, careful thinking around policy, right policy and regulation can do in terms of transforming the fortunes of an economy and the wealth of those who live there. Next slide. So what else did it do? It squeezed out investment, both domestic investment and foreign direct investment. Squeezed it out in favor of government expenditure. So there was a new philosophy that implicitly disliked, whether it said so or not, implicitly disliked private capital and therefore private consumption, and focused on government expenditure. as the driver of growth in the economy. And because we didn't have money, we resorted to borrowing to finance that expenditure. So let's see some illustrations of that proposition. Next slide. So this is FDI. Again, it follows the same trajectory as the... So FDI follows the same trajectory. Again, peaked. In the case of FDI, actually that 2015, maybe around 2011, 2012, and steadily, next slide, almost nil to zero. Capital inflows. So the biggest, in my view, the biggest tragedy of the Nigerian economy in the last 8 years was this destruction of investment, which is the cycle for economic activity. That's where it all starts, right? All of you are businessmen. I can see my brother, Philip. The first thing you always do is to invest. Then you generate output. Then you generate employment. Then so once we attack investment, we destroyed all of those other things: employment, GDP growth, all of that. Consumption that follows from it. Next slide. As a percentage of GDP, it's still the same information, but we can see the disappearance of foreign direct investment over the last. Next slide. What else did it do? Notice the impact of all of these things on wealth. There's no growth. There's no investment. Now, there's high inflation. Wale and his colleagues will tell you that the biggest challenge of their investors and customers is preserving the value of their investment. So very high inflation obviously destroys the value of your investments. So you can see how inflation behaves. This is from 2019. We're now at 22.79 and rising. Of course, that means, in layman's understanding, that means that every naira you get in 1 year reduces in value by 22%, almost 20. So if you got $1 million naira, if it's January 1 this year, by December, it is worth somewhere around 78. Exactly. If you do nothing else. This is from 1999. Again, it's the highest. We are the highest level of inflation in that era. So we're not talking about short-term problems now. If you took the Nigerian economy over the period of return to civil rule, this era has produced the highest. Next slide.
If you can read this slide for me, there was something that struck me. There was something that struck me. This shows 3 eras in terms of exchange rate management in Nigeria since 1990.
The first era equals Obasanjo, right? We basically kept the same exchange rate balance for 8 years, right? But that Obasanjo from 4 days. So we had exchange rate stability. Then we had the global financial crisis and the collapse in the price of oil. And that was the Gunadite to Yabagua. And in 24 hours a day, we have the devaluation. in terms of that level of devaluation, and in terms of the poverty and that if there was one factor that killed investment, it was the exchange rate policy. So if you measure the benefits against the cost, you can come to your own judgment as to whether the costs outweighed, the cost did not outweigh. Next slide. It resulted in rising unemployment and worsening poverty. So when people like us gather, we sometimes forget the social. Sometimes, poverty, next slide, unemployment, all of those other topics, the security, all of those that don't affect us. But those are the wider social. Next slide, please. Social need. So we've stopped releasing unemployment data for 2020 because we have an idea of what they will look like. We have a very clear idea about what they would look like. But the 2020 was bad, And more importantly, the charging also from 2015. Also from 2015. Next slide. That's unemployment, that's poverty. If we reflect fully on social data, most of us will probably not sleep at night. Because this data alone tells you that there are about 86 million multidimensionally poor people living in northern Nigeria. 85 million. That tells you, that just explains everything that is going on in the northern parts of Nigeria. But even in the southern parts of Nigeria, 16.3 million plus 19.7 million plus 10.9 million. So poverty is unacceptably high in Nigeria. And we also know what current policies will be doing as we speak to that data. Next slide. Resulted in rising debts, worsening debt service, and negative fiscal outlook. So the sum total, I've explained to you why we didn't have capital, we didn't have revenue, but we didn't like private capital, so we started increasing debts. And we increased debt such that debt service now is close to 100% debt service over revenue, as many of you should have heard. And we increased the reason I like these slides is that they tell you Nigeria's story. So this is from 2001. And you can see the disappearance of our external debt in 2006 and 7 as we reached the Paris Club debt write-off hill. And we wiped away more or less our external debt. And we became under-borrowed. And then we then steadily began to grow debts again. And especially, once again, in the context of the policy choices we made in the last lecture. It caused interest rates to rise precipitately, of course. In that context, monetary policy rate started at 13%, the 18.5%. And finally, for that era, Naira redesign, which was an enforced error, but which also destroyed wealth, and which was questionable in his wickedness, because already poor and desperate people were made further desperate, almost for no reason. Because today we struggle to find why we inflicted those constraints on the economy and on ourselves. And it was the first time that the type of people in this room, many of whom I spoke with during the era, were all poor. Because we didn't have cash. And I noticed, you see, I have one bad habit. I like all these small snacks, local snacks, like Agbado, like Epa, and all of Boli, and all of those things. And I noticed that I couldn't buy those things. And then I wondered about the fate of the guys that were selling those things. Well, it nearly caused starvation. So I'm particularly what it did to GDP in Q1. So all of these things have consequences. Lower than Q1 2022, lower than Q4 2022, all of which cannot be explained except for the cash scarcity that we had. Okay, next slide. So let's get back from tragedy. I think I was minded to ask a question: which of all these things most eroded wealth? Which was the upper court that caught the chin of the Nigerian home? Well, it depends on where you are. If you are getting low-cost dollars from central bank, official dollars, it was enhancing your wealth. And if you are proximate to fuel subsidy in NNPC, it was also building wealth. So Cordros Asset Management, depending on their values, may be interested in you, right? But for most of us, all of these things were destroying wealth. Particularly the way we were managing the currency and the devaluations, the inflationary effects of policy, the growth that was not happening and therefore not giving an opportunity for businesses to expand and grow. And the fuel subsidy, the average person would believe, insofar as it kept fuel prices stable, it was helping them, which on the surface is true, was destroying the whole country's macroeconomic context and destroying fiscal sustainability in the whole country. And therefore, all of us as a whole were becoming poorer because now, in the interest of fairness, some people always ask me, so did it do any good thing? So just for the purposes of fairness and balance, I say that there's an argument that infrastructure improved in some instances, but there were no generalized benefits. There's an argument that there were concessional financing schemes that allowed some businesses to grow, but that in itself is market distortionary and considered more deeply is a negative for economy. There were improvements in our scores on enabling environment, but I know how those improvements were secured. because we understood the marking scheme and we worked to the marking scheme. But did you feel an improvement in the enabling environment of your businesses? I'm sorry, no. Technology, yes, the great big area of growth, Florida Wave, Paystack, Andela, all those things coming out interswitch. We did well. But was government responsible for it? Indeed, it is because of the absence of government in those spaces, arts, entertainment, those spaces that did well. It's possible to argue that it was precisely because they are outside the web. And what policy and regulation did, even in those spaces, some of you know, an attempt to impede them and to restrain them. Some sectors continue to do well. ICT, as we saw, finance and commercial, finance and insurance, as we saw, Dangote refinery. The things that I put a question mark over, I think they are valid debates to be had, some of which we won't do here. But two clear areas I think policy advanced the prospects of reform and growth in Nigeria is in terms of the Petroleum Industry Act that was passed but not implemented in August 2021, and then last-minute legislations on power and rail, which might provide an opportunity for greater investments in those sectors. Now, that conditions might be slightly better. So let's move on. The new government. So now we have now. And there's a reason I'm showing this picture. Next slide. The fuel subsidy is gone. The famous quote that came out of that day. And then the 65% initial devaluation of subsidized CBN dollars. Of course, and rising. So those are the two highlights of policy. I think even Wale and our chairman mentioned them. So we know I won't go into all of these have resulted in. Today we have petrol at 568, Lagos at 617 in Abuja, dollars on 17.7 on the I&E at which 795, 810, 820. Inflation has already risen. So the essence, clearly these initial policies are also further eroding wealth of persons resident in and holding financial assets in local currency in Nigeria. But here I add in the short term. Capital markets investors, on the other hand, have gained some value, as Wale will recall we predicted. And indeed, Wale will recall we predicted all of this a year ago. So, Nigerians, are these things surprising? Maybe not, if you focused on what's going on. However, we expect that the impact of these policies should be positive in the medium to longer term, provided, and that's a huge proviso, provided government successfully manages the short-term risks of social and industrial crisis. And I think those short-term risks are rising. So what's beyond that snapshot? What do we expect in that medium and longer term that we're talking about? Increased revenue for federal, states, and local government. That's already, I'm told, going to manifest in this month. So the federal, states, and local governments are going to share significantly larger figures. Because from those two policies, they've released huge subsidies that were being dissipated to other parties. They've released them, withdrawn them from those parties, and may now release them to the state. Those on its own, higher subsidies for states and local governments and federal doesn't necessarily translate into good outcomes. So it is now the responsibility of others, including all of us, and the media and civil society to ensure that increased revenues translate into better outcomes. Larger and more sustained investment flows, rising investor confidence, stronger GDP growth and improving GDP per capita, improved downstream and upstream oil sector performance, enhanced employment. The critical question that will affect all the scenarios right now is when will exchange rates stabilize? When will FDI and portfolio flows reach equilibrium? I think my personal view is that the government got the big strategic decisions correct, and I support those two fallacies. The big challenge are the details and the tactical implementation steps, and all the little steps required to release the benefit, the possible benefits of those two policies. But strategically, I think I'm 100% agreed with them. And one of the most important urgent steps, as Wale and I were discussing this one, is to have a cabinet in place. It's not surprising that you can get a single president and a few advisors can get strategic decisions correct, cannot make tactical implementation steps on a day-to-day basis. If you are a foreign investor sitting in New York or London, you heard about subsidies gone and currency finding its true value, you might be pleased. You will be pleased. But is there a central bank governor substantive? No. Is there a cabinet, minister for finance, minister for this? What's happening with the CBN in terms of all other aspects of trade and imports and all of that? So you will look, smile, but wait. And therefore, we need to get those tactical decisions right. And for that to happen, the first step is to have a cabinet in place and a sense around decision making on a day-to-day basis. Next slide. Next slide. What further policy changes might we expect? Because the government is just starting. Next slide. Well, I think the two most important decisions have been taken. And while we can debate, my initial preference, and I was arguing this to people who may have become relevant in the system, I was arguing that how can you remove subsidies when there's no cabinet in place, when there's no this, if there's a strike, for instance, who is the minister of labor, who will respond? All of those arguments. It's possible to argue here and there, but now maybe there are also advantages to the thing becoming a fait accompli, but it is critical that we now begin to respond on a day-to-day basis in a proactive manner rather than in a reactive sense. So what else should you expect? Minimum wage, of course, fuel subsidy palliatives, but how? Tax and fiscal policy reforms, a focus on agriculture and food security. Indeed, we've declared an emergency, but what does that mean in terms of actual policy outcomes? You need a minister. CBN and monetary policy reforms. How will we end the matter of the suspension in CBN? When will we have a substantive and credible central bank government? For reforms in the NMPC and upstream oil sector, return of privatization, PPPs and infrastructure concessioning, imperative of electric power sector reforms, institutional and public sector reforms around your nursery report, return of commodity boards. Of all the things that I think appear to be coming out, is that one that I don't fully understand and that I hope we can think more carefully through exactly what the intention is, and then combating insecurity. By and large, if we do all of these things and if we do them with the right policy orientation and the depth of thinking and competence in policy and management required, things might turn out to be better. So I attempted the dangerous job of trying to see beyond the short term in terms of, I will beg that you should not look at the figures that are put there. Just look at the trends. So the trends are, I'm telling you, GDP growth is going to accelerate, and that we are heading back towards that average of 6 to 7%. I'm saying that inflation will get worse before it gets better. For the exchange rate, don't quote me that I said 850. It may be 1,000. It may be more. Nobody knows. The key question I ask, when will we reach equilibrium? The question is as they say, is it hanging in the winds or what? So, but I think that the trend is also that it will get worse before it gets better. Reserves will begin to stabilize after this year, as we have stopped the futile efforts to control both reserves and exchange rates. And then interest rates will also get worse slightly, but the government doesn't like high interest rates. So it will get worse, more slight than it should before it gets. So for the longer term, I think Nigeria and those in Cordros who have seen variants of this type with slightly different inputs will know that we've always had three scenario possibilities. A status, which is wavering. Nigeria has been wavering for the last decade. But then the possibility of a sustained expansion was always there. And then the possibility of collapse is always evident as well. And we always make choices between these three possibilities, these three scenarios. I think that counterintuitively as it may sound for those experiencing the pains of fuel subsidies and exchange rate devaluation, counterintuitively as it may sound, I think we are moving now in the direction of sustained expansion. One of the problems is that we allow the noise of politics to distort our perception of policy, and we lose the essence of the opportunities that are present in the marketplace. So if you look at all of the elements of this, I think that policy is being fixed. We have the opportunity of the Africa Continental Free Trade Zone at a period in which we are reforming. We are now moving to implementation of the Petroleum Industry Act. We're deregulating. We're resuming investment, tax and fiscal reforms, all of which will result in improved competitiveness, and that we may be moving in the direction of sustained expansion. Next slide, and I'm almost rounding up. So what might you do about all of this not from a financial expert's view, but from a macroeconomic expert? Next slide. Clearly, diversified investment holdings, especially around currency. I don't want to be the one advocating people to invest in dollars, but it is Cordros Asset Management that has diaspora funds and FX funds. Which domestic asset classes appear to hedge inflation relatively, because it's all relative? Well, it seems real estate makes a good job of it, a bit. It seems, of course, clearly investments in FX make a good job of it. In a growth environment, domestic capital markets may do something about it. And if you invest right, private equity investments do some good job. I say that there is nothing like owning a sustainably profitable business. So there is no alternative to being the owner of Zenith Bank or GT Bank or any of those things. Banking, profitable fintech models, ICT and payments, as we've seen in the Nigerian economy, digital, obviously, anything that is digital, entertainment and creatives, and fast-moving consumer goods. Earning FX income, but not incurring FX expenses. So the logic of Japa is faulty in my view, because you will earn FX income, but you will incur FX expenses. I think those who will do well may be those who stay here, spend Naira, but earn dollars. Carefully tracking and taking advantage of opportunities from economic and sectoral reforms. So when all these reforms are going on, if you focus on privatization, downstream deregulation, even the things going on with FX, what opportunities do they release? Rather than on the politics and the noise around it. The question, what do Shubomi Balogun, Foladeola, Jim Ovia, Folorunsho Alakija, Femi Otedola, Wale Tinubu, MTN, Seplat, what do they have in common? They took advantage of ongoing economic reforms early, while the rest of us argued about SAP and needs, Obasanjo, and all of those things. And it will happen again now. Board directorships in the private and public sector. I think everybody needs something that stops them from dipping into their investment capital. What I find is that these things help people cover their recurrent expenditure, therefore preserve their capital. So those are common sense views from a macroeconomist and about preserving your wealth in this context. Next slide, and I think possibly final slide. So you would have guessed I'm relatively more positive about our medium to longer term economic policy and investment outlook. I suspect there will be opportunities to grow and preserve wealth in the emerging scenarios for those who are focused on opportunities rather than norms. There are risks in the short term, of course, and I deliberately want to end with those risks. Social and is a real risk, a rising risk. Regime policy commitment, tactical discipline, and sustainability, and avoiding hubris and arrogance. States and local governments in particular, but also the federal government, filtering away they can enhance revenue flows to waste and corruption, and thus discrediting reforms. It's a big risk. Insufficient and delayed foreign support for our reforms, thus delaying, increasing the pain and withholding the benefits of reforms. And then politics. Politics interfering with policy and economic management, especially as elections approach in 2027. So if we do manage and are proactive in relation to these risks, I think good times may be back in Nigeria. Thank you.
Mr. Agbaje, thank you very much for that. Very insightful. Take time travel. I think that's what we did, especially in the first of that presentation. And then, of course, a lot of very important thoughts as we proceed further. I want us to move on to our next presentation, and this time it will be virtual. I'll just say a few things about him. Mr. Michael Yanni is the founder and CEO of Yan Capital, a wealth management consultancy. So he plays at a certain level. Those are some of his credentials. Just move right into his presentation now, as we hear from him as he describes 5 steps that will improve your wealth management journey in 2023 going forward. So I hand you over to Michael Yanni.
Good morning to everybody in Lagos attending this Cordros Wealth Summit. I would have loved to have been there in the room with you all to meet you in person and to enjoy this day together and to engage and discuss and brainstorm with each other. I hope to be able to meet you in the future. Unfortunately, this summer my travel plans are a bit extensive and I'm out of the country at the moment. I was actually just in Nigeria a few weeks ago over the inauguration weekend of President Tinubu. As always, had a fantastic time in the country, meeting clients, friends, prospective partners as well, and generally taking in the energy of Nigeria. I'd like to begin by expressing my gratitude to the team at Cordros Capital for inviting me to be a part of the Wealth Summit, to share some thoughts and ideas with you, to be a keynote speaker and panelist, is a huge honor for me. I wish I was there in person with you, like I said, and it really is testament to the team at Cordros and the management and their vision to put on such a prestigious event and gather speakers and clients to share these ideas and explore how to enhance the wealth management experience for Nigerian private clients. For those of you who may not know me, my name is Michael Yanni. I'm the founder and CEO of Yan Capital, a London-based boutique wealth management consultancy. I've been running the firm for 6 years now. I'm based in Dubai as of the last 3 years, and really I set up this firm on feedback from my Nigerian clients as to what they really need and want in the wealth management space. What I'd like to do today is talk about the last 16 years and the experience that I've had with private clients in the wealth management industry, with a particular focus on Nigeria, which I've covered for my entire career. So I'd like to just share some of the thoughts and the journey that has brought me to this stage today. And really the lessons that I've gathered are lessons from my Nigerian private clients, my high net worth and ultra high net worth clients and families who have trusted me to help them steward their wealth, plan for the next generation, and optimize their holdings. Really what I'm talking about today is the journey that I've shared with these clients that I've been so blessed to work with, and also the lessons that I've gathered from observing these inspiring business leaders and their families in the management, and also in the challenges of optimizing their wealth. An era overflowing with information, data and advice coming from every different angle, with so many so-called experts in brand new asset classes and regions around the world. I think today more than ever it's really important to have some insights, which I hope I can share with you over from my experience with Nigerian clients and in the wealth management sector in particular, that will help you identify the information and make the decisions needed to drive the wealth management experience better towards your own personal circumstances, priorities and objectives. I've always said that this is a people-facing, problem-solving business, and working very closely with my clients and deepening our relationship together to really understand and actually drive closer to self-awareness of their own circumstances, priorities and goals has really been a game changer in the way that we approach this traditional challenge of managing wealth. To me, wealth management is about families that have exchanged energy, resources and their efforts to acquire wealth. And so that wealth has to really serve a purpose now and become a tool in their arsenal to really drive them closer to the ideal life which they envisaged when they really started to pursue this sacrifice to build that life for themselves and for their loved ones and for the communities in which they work. And so a deeper understanding of who we are, what we have, and our priorities in different seasons of our life really help shape the discussions that we have and how we make decisions, who we bring to the table to discuss various challenges with, what is a challenge and what is an opportunity in terms of where you are in a particular part of your life and a season of your life, and really selecting advice from all of this noise that is around in order to make better decisions that are in line with your particular objectives. Let's talk a little bit about my background and what has brought me to this stage actually. So I was born in Sudan. My background is originally Egyptian. My family moved to London when I was just 1 year old, and I spent my entire life and my education and initial years of work in London. After business school, where I studied banking and international finance, I joined Barclays Wealth in London at the bank's global headquarters. I was between Mayfair and Canary Wharf, and in that time I was assigned to the Africa team. So I was wondering, what am I doing covering Nigeria? I don't know anything about this region. I don't know anybody from Nigeria, and I was quite interested as to, okay, what does this market involve? Why is it a priority area for the bank, and so on. So I spent 8 years at Barclays, and really after the first couple of years I was traveling to Nigeria 4 or 5 times a year to meet clients, to talk about what we could do at the institution offshore. I handled mainly their lending books, their asset management and investment management, their wealth structuring, looking for efficiencies in clients' holding structures, and really giving them the best of what the institution could do. I spent 6 months with Barclays Asia, learning in Singapore about what clients in this more established market were doing, trying to bring those ideas back to the Nigerian wealth management desk and really absorb some of those synergies and ideas that the market there was doing really well. So I then spent 6 months at the wealth structuring desk, which was a team primarily made up of lawyers who were problem solving for the bank's most complex clients from around the globe, particularly with a view to trusts, tax and insurance, an area which was later much more valuable to my Nigerian clients, especially who were looking to diversify and ring fence assets and structures around the world. Throughout my time at Barclays, I completed my investment management certificate and also went through the 3-year Chartered Financial Analyst program. Extremely technical and more actually focused on investment management, research, stock picking and portfolio management than wealth management. But there was a lot in there in terms of achieving the technical standards required that then translated to a better wealth management experience for my clients. I stayed at Barclays for 8 years and left the bank in 2016 at the vice president level. At that point, I had a book of around 50 clients, and that was $200 million US, which I was managing in terms of assets for the bank from clients from Nigeria. I focused very much only on Nigeria. The bank's mandate was Pan-Africa, but I decided to really focus on this particular market and really develop some experience in this niche. Like I said, that was taking me to Nigeria 4 or 5 times a year to meet with existing clients, prospective clients, and really deepen the relationship and understanding that I had of this market and of the particular needs and challenges that clients there faced. 8 years into my career, I'd worked under 3 different CEOs at Barclays and saw quite a bit of a transformation in terms of priority areas for the bank. I saw markets and business lines being acquired and being disposed of. I saw priority areas changing. I saw a massive shift in the regulatory landscape, and actually quite a big difference from the bank that I had joined to the bank to the time that I had left Barclays in terms of what it meant to onboard a client, what clients were expected to provide, what the bank was willing to offer in terms of solutions and services and pricing, and what the requirements were. And actually observed that across multiple institutions, all of our competitor banks at that time, in the region, in the UK, Europe and beyond, and actually understanding what shift was taking place in the market towards clients from the continent. I left the bank in 2016 to join a more boutique asset management firm, more of an external asset manager type multi-family office structure. I thought I would try something which was on the other end of the spectrum to a big universal bank and actually look at a firm which is more specialized in wealth management and asset management. Though after 1.5 years, I understood from my clients that they were looking for much more of a holistic approach. They weren't looking for a firm just to manage their assets outside of Nigeria and pick various stocks and bonds and notes to put them in. Clients in Nigeria at that time could earn quite substantial double-digit returns on cash deposits, and so taking funds offshore from this environment meant that they were looking for something else. They were looking for more advice, structuring, lending, banking, more of a holistic approach to managing their offshore wealth that they'd worked so hard to achieve. So actually being at an external asset manager and just looking at investment ideas wasn't really what my clients were looking to do. So what I decided to do then was leave in 2017, and in July 2017 I set up Yan Capital as a boutique wealth management consultancy. The idea here was to provide a hybrid approach to managing wealth, to really work for clients directly, to understand what each client and family was looking to achieve, and then try to deliver a very bespoke and tailored service, drawing from my network, drawing from my experience and bringing the best advisors to my clients' table. So really understanding what my clients' financial bucket list was, where their challenges were, where their ambitions were, and actually just helping them write pretty much a financial bucket list and tick off areas and objectives which we would set together, which I would challenge my clients to think about more broadly, where I would play devil's advocate and actually say, why do you want to do this, why do you want to do that, and bring experts to the table who would help us execute and extract value. So instead of the client having to just be at the mercy of one bank which may exit the entire continent or country or business line, or be in a situation where they're just being sold a particular type of product or solution, we're in a position where clients could say, this is what I'm looking to achieve, and then invite specialists and experts and institutions with senior professionals to their table to pitch to the client to win that business. So clients then had multiple institutions trying to win their business, as opposed to them having to pitch to an institution as to why they should take them on board. So the client's wealth management journey started to take on quite a dynamic angle where my clients actually had more choice, more options, and we were more tailored in terms of the approach that we were putting forward in terms of what we wanted these institutions to deliver and how. At YanCap, my role is to focus on direct and regular engagement with my clients to help them understand their own circumstances and priorities, to put into words their journey through wealth, to corroborate this journey with evidence and detail which tells their story more vividly, and to really determine what path we would like to take to improve their position from where it is today, to set an ideal lifestyle, an ideal wealth allocation, an ideal circumstance for the client to then work towards with the help of various experts and solutions from across the globe. My work with clients really helps them to save time and money and stress throughout the wealth management journey, whilst also leading to better outcomes. So really it's a very collaborative approach that aims to take out a lot of the stress of the process to help clients really just extract the value that they need to and get the outcomes which they are hoping for throughout this wealth management journey. The journey that I share with my clients is a 5-stage process. So I'll go into detail now on these 5 stages, and I hope that there's something in here that you can take away to work with your family or your advisors, or with me if you choose to develop a plan and to gather more insights about how to manage your wealth in the best way for you. Every client and family that I work with is completely unique, with different motivations for why they pursued the accumulation of their wealth over their career and life, what they plan to do and how they plan to utilize that wealth, and with completely different views on what type of lifestyle they wish to create for themselves, for their family, and for the next generation. Stage 1 is know yourself. So it's all about self-awareness and understanding your own journey to wealth. The key starting point in any wealth management journey, I believe, and any discussion around wealth management, is to understand, detail, and reflect on your own story, to be able to retell your story and your journey to date. Describing this story in detail is something that I work very closely with clients in, to actually write a 10 to 15 page profile, mini autobiography for financial purposes on the client's story, which is something that the offshore institutions outside of Nigeria really need to understand, especially when they throw words around like KYC and due diligence and AML, and they need to understand your source of wealth. It's important to be able to tell that story with no gaps and provide evidence and corroboration for everything that we're looking through and working on together. So to be able to tell that story, to give comfort and transparency to these institutions, and also to be able to identify if there's any areas which we need to reorganize, to tidy up, so that your story and your affairs are in order. Number 2 is to know your worth, which is really an exercise that I carry out with clients as a net worth analysis and audit of an itemized list of their total assets. It may surprise you that most people that I work with and speak to don't know what their net worth is. If you ask somebody in the room next to you, what's your net worth, they probably wouldn't have a figure in US dollars off the top of their head. It's a simple calculation on paper, which is total assets minus total liabilities, but the insights and the nuance really comes in when we look at the itemized breakdown of that. During this exercise with clients, we often uncover an over-concentration of wealth in illiquid assets or business equity, or an overexposure to a particular currency like the Naira, a commodity like oil, or a geography like the UK or Nigeria in particular. Typically, when I conduct this exercise with clients, we come up with 10 to 15 areas which now become objectives, 10 to 15 areas where we see that we could do more, we could do better, areas where we have too much exposure and so we don't need to continue accumulating in one particular area, or another region entirely where we have no exposure, where we would like to add some. Similarly, we can conduct this exercise on net income, so total income minus total expenses. This serves quite well in terms of identifying whether there's too much of a dependence on a particular income stream or an area of life which may be draining resources in terms of expenses, and ensuring we can discuss how to optimize the holdings and the reliance of those various income streams and expense lines to ensure that you're not eroding your capital and that you're living in a way which is in sync with your objectives and your goals. To chart your future financial course, I think it's really important to know exactly in detail where you are today, how that is made up, what your net worth is, and be able to decide where you want to be in 1 year, 2 years, 5 years. Stage 3 is to know your priorities. Prioritization and objective setting are really important in the pursuit of managing your wealth better. I think it's a good chance to ask yourself and to think about what your driving forces are for pursuing wealth. Is it the well-being of your family? Is it to make an impact in your industry or your country or your space that you operate in? Is it to work towards a comfortable retirement, a desire to buy a property as a forever home or a holiday home, or invest in homegrown tech startups? The answers to these questions can reveal your true aspirations, clarify your priorities, and determine what your wealth means to you. Stage 4 of the journey is to know your strengths and your limitations. There's going to be some things that only you can do and things that you can do better than anybody else. And that is probably why you've accumulated the wealth that you have. I think it's really important to focus on those and to bring in outside advice and expert support when you need it, so that you could really be as productive and as efficient as possible. I think it's very, very difficult for anybody to become a master in all aspects of their life, in all aspects of their financial and wealth management. Even if you're a banker or a chairman of a bank or somebody who has made all of their money through trading stocks and bonds, there are areas where you can do better than anybody else and where you're more interested and where your energy delivers you a much higher return on your time and your resources, and other areas where you need to delegate or bring in external advice and support. If we can clearly define our story, our net worth, our own challenges and opportunities and priorities, I think we can really get the best value extracted from any experts or specialists or institutions that we work with. You're giving them a finite, narrow range in which to deliver you the advice that you have determined you need. Stage 5 is to know that this is a continuous process and to enjoy that journey. The wealth management journey is not a destination. It's a process of continuous evaluation and adaptation. What worked today may not work in a few years' time. What solutions which you set up 5 years ago may not be robust in today's landscape. What you want today and prioritize today may change in a few years' time. What you once valued and pursued with all of your energy may be something that you want to pull away from in future. You may want to live somewhere else, work in a different industry, dedicate your time to philanthropic or family endeavors rather than your career. Asset values that you have may skyrocket or crash. You may work longer than you need to or would like to, or you may exit your business earlier than you anticipated and be in a position of much greater wealth much earlier or later in your life. And so it's really important to continually revisit this plan, see it as part of a journey, and work closely with your advisors to ensure that you're revisiting and reviewing. My clients often initiate their wealth management journey with a particular goal in mind or a particular objective that they wish to achieve, whether that is to set up a new private bank account offshore, acquire a property and finance it, set up some kind of structure for their family, acquire real estate in a country outside Nigeria like the UK or the UAE, for example. But often the best outcomes are reached and the best relationships and collaborations are established on a more holistic approach. When we sit down, put everything out on the table, look at all of the assets and affairs and challenges and aspirations that the client and their family have at a particular stage in their life, and go through this 5-stage process and really work closely and collaboratively together. During that, we uncover areas which may not have been a particular objective or priority that need to be, or areas where actually we have a lot more success which we can capitalize on that may have been neglected or unforeseen. In many cases of clients that I look after now, I actually once looked after their patriarch and matriarch of the family. Their father and mother were a client of mine at some point in the last 16 years. We had close relationships and they have now unfortunately passed. But that wealth has passed on smoothly to the next generation. In some cases, not so smoothly, and there's a lot of interruption. Clients can be disheveled and stressed and concerned and actually need somebody who can provide some continuity in that process. So many of the clients I look after today, I looked after their parents previously, and it's important to have, again, a holistic understanding of these families, what their priorities were, what legacy was intended to be left, and to be able to provide some kind of balance and support to the family now as they steward that wealth for the next generation too. While I collaboratively work with many institutions and experts around the world, including Cordros Capital in Nigeria, including many of the private banks, specialists and brokers outside of the continent as well, Yang Capital remains a one-man operation. What this means is that my capacity can be limited, and I really only take on a handful of clients each year that I work closely with to ensure that the level of service and the level of involvement, as detailed throughout the last 20 minutes, is something which I can ensure that they are benefiting from on an annual basis. So it would be really great to meet you in person one day. If you're interested in working together, I'd love to speak with you. Please get in touch with your team at Cordros and ask for an introduction, and it would be my pleasure to meet you in Nigeria or London or Dubai at some time in the future. Take care and enjoy the rest of the event.
Valuable insights we can consider as we consider the future of wealth as we continue this interaction at this Wealth Summit.
and I hope that you found something useful in that presentation. We're going to allow Michael to take a few questions later on in the program, but for now, what we're going to do is we're going to have a short tea break. There are some refreshments right outside the room, so I encourage you to please participate in that. We'll be back in 20 minutes, but while we do, one of the things that I'm sure you're going to really find interesting when we get to it later is the conversation around art and wealth. And while you're having the tea break, you will find a table where you might be able to experience what's been described as augmented reality with art. It's an interesting development that technology is enabling. We're going to be talking a bit about it later on in the panel, and you will see where the opportunity lies in that space. But we're going to give you the opportunity to experience it here, so please take advantage of that as you refresh yourself. I'll be back in about 20 minutes. Thank you very much. I know that we were considering demonstrating the augmented reality art. Is that ready now? Perhaps we can just show that for a minute before we get started with. I understand not everyone had the chance to experience it, so we're going to put it on the screen for you. And I am sure you're going to find the conversation around it very interesting when we move into the panel discussion and we'll talk about art and wealth. There are some interesting trends that technology is enabling, and you may find even some interesting investment opportunities there as well. Okay. Sure how much this means to you just viewing this setting, but Bayo and Dako, sorry, Dako, do you want to say just a few words about what they're watching, if you don't mind? Just 1 minute, literally.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. What's on display is Africa's first augmented reality art experience. Augmented reality is something that may be new to some of you here, but I want you to understand that I studied art, and I'm speaking to Cordros about the future of art. Sorry, the future of wealth. The future of wealth. We all know that art appreciates so much. Some people buy it because they love it, some people buy it because it appreciates. I made it because I love it. And like I said, what I'm showing you today is Africa's first augmented reality art experience. I'm going to speak more on it. I just have 1 minute to introduce myself. My name is Oladapo Ogunjobi, also known as Overture. It's a pleasure and an honor to be with you guys today. Thank you.
Thank you. So no doubt, in my opinion, this does not do justice to the experience. So I want to encourage you, maybe after we're done, get the opportunity as well to experience it for yourself. And as he mentioned, we're going to be talking about the investment opportunities that lie within art. But right now, we want to continue with the rest of the program as I invite Mr. Wale Agbeyangi to deliver a brief presentation about Cordros and potentially what they can do for you with respect to your wealth. A round of applause for him, please.
Thank you very much, Wale. Let me start by thanking everyone for finding the time to be here today. It's quite difficult on a Thursday afternoon to get close to 100 people into a room for 3 hours. But when we started planning for this, with my team, and we said, we want, we don't want everybody to come for this conference. We want few people who actually benefit, from this conversation. And, I jokingly said, if you don't have $1 billion, you can't be in this room. And of course, I see everybody, and everybody has, more than, $1 billion each. So, but that's on a lighter note. So, so you know that if you are here, the taxman is not here, so don't worry. Taxman is not here. So, very simply, I think this is our attempt to deepen conversation, in this industry and in this, sector of this industry, which is wealth management industry. And it's a highly specialized, highly, difficult area to understand if you do not have the skill for it. And interestingly, in Nigeria, you find that most experts that we have in the wealth management industry, they are women. And I think there's a reason for that. because women have perfected the act of, managing money and being able to transfer, that to the next generation easily. And of course, we have experts like Choma or Kigo, and other experts here who have done that, very well. So it's an attempt to deepen that conversation. And of course, I would like you to know about Cordros, for some of you who don't really know much about us, and what we have been doing in the last 15, 16 years. We were founded in 2007 during the financial global economic crisis. So we were born at a very difficult time, but we have been able to weather that storm. We started with 6 members of staff. Now we're over 100. We're in Lagos, we're in Abuja, we're in Port Harcourt, and we're opening Kano very soon. So that shows some of the things, how we have improved over the years. And of course, we're a leading financial services group in Nigeria. We're licensed, by Securities and Exchange Commission as broker-dealer, as stockbrokers. We are licensed by SEC as an investment banking business, so we have an national license. And we have a fund and portfolio manager's license from SEC as well. And of course, we have license, as an insurance brokerage firm. We are registrars and we are trustees. And I've been very lucky to have, experienced directors, and shareholders who have supported us. And of course, we are led by no one else but our chairman, Engineer Charles Osezua, ON. Please join me to appreciate our chairman for a very good job. It's been awesome having him to lead Cordros in the last 15 years. And of course, I also have here one of our directors, Mr. Mbano Denze, who is here. And I think I have online our vice chairman, Mr. Emeka Ndu, is also online. I jokingly said that almost everybody knows Emeka Ndu in Nigeria. Anywhere he goes, so Emeka is there, Emeka is there. So it's been incredible having him, as our director. And of course, those are other directors, Mr. Osinokere, Mr. Ike Boga, Chief Tulio Kuturo, Femi Ademola, our group executive director, and my humble self as the group managing director. And we're also lucky to have extremely talented, management team, people who have worked tirelessly to get Cordros to where we are today. So we are very, very lucky to have these very brilliant, young women and men to support Cordros. And of course, we have shareholders who have supported us incredibly, and we have some of them here. And of course, some of them don't really like me mentioning their names in public, but I think I just have to appreciate shareholders who have supported this business. It's been incredible having them to support us. We have Mr. Fala Ogunlesi who is here. And, Mr. Ogunlesi has been very supportive in actually directing us on where we should be going. So thank you very much, sir, for all that you have been doing to support us. And of course, we have Mr. Kayode Ogunlesi here. And you won't even stand up. So, so I also have Mr. Philip Obioa and his wife, here today. Thank you very much, for the support you have given to Cordros. And as you know, from a one business of being a stockbroker, we have matured into having 6 subsidiaries. And of course, I mentioned some of those licenses that we have. Cordros Securities is number 1. We are one of the top 5 brokers in the market, and we have been very consistent, in the kind of clients that we do business with. And of course, that we do business with international portfolio traders. We do business with pension funds, and of course, retail traders. So Cordros Securities is the oldest in our portfolio of businesses. Next is Cordros Investment Banking. Of course, we raise capital for governments and corporate institutions, and of course, we supported, very big businesses in Nigeria, and we continue to help them to strengthen their business. Cordros Asset Management, which is the host business of today, this is a business that, we believe is the future for our group. And what we do is we we provide a spectrum of wealth management solutions, for our clients in Naira or in foreign currency assets. And, we have grown the business 6 years ago from 0 asset to over 120 billion asset under management. So it's a business that we have really suited very well in the last 6 years. Kudos to Wale and other members of that team. Please appreciate Wale, who is the managing director of Cordros Wealth Management. He's done very well. And of course, 3 years ago, we thought, any business that gives us access to manage people's investment, we should be interested in it. And so we started 3 businesses: Cordros Trustees, Cordros Registrars, and Cordros Insurance Brokers. And of course, all these businesses, they are interwoven because they help a great deal in helping us to access our clients and be sure that we're in charge of all their investments. So we have a very profitable business, and I dare to say that. And of course, our shareholders, they may not want me to speak to that, but we've achieved, a very great deal in terms of, our financials. We have a 5-year CAGR of 52%. Our return on equity averages, 35 to 40% in the last, 3 years. And of course, we got an A rating from a Data Pro last year, just for you to know how well we have been able to manage this business for our clients to be comfortable, for our shareholders to be happy, and for the industry, to also know that there are new sets of people coming up in the industry, young people, and that we are part of that pack, and are very, very proud of our, what we have been able to achieve and the support we get from our clients. But finally, I'd like to thank, the experts that we have in the room today who have, been doing justice to the subject matter of discussion today. I'd like to thank our chairman, for his very insightful, statement on wealth and family. And of course, I'd like to thank Sven, who flew in all the way from Switzerland to join us today for this, event. Please help me to thank Sven, who has been wonderful. Agbeyangi, also joined us from Dubai. And of course, Choma Akibo, who is one of the best experts we have in the wealth management industry. Choma, thank you very much for coming. Mr. Opeyemi Agbaje. Opeyemi has been our strategy consultant for 16 years. And so every year we meet Opeyemi twice a year. And of course, you saw the quality. And of course, and some clients have asked me, why didn't you introduce Opeyemi to me? I'm like, no, you have to go through me to see Opeyemi. If you see Opeyemi, you won't do business with us. So, Opeyemi, thank you very much, for supporting us. Yes. I also like Dr. Ogunjobi, thank you very much for coming. Isiri Agbeyi, thank you very much, for short notice, and you accepted to be part of this. Thank you very much. And of course, our own Ifeoma Udom, Managing Director of Cordros Trustees. Thank you very much for your effort and for putting this together. And of course, Wale Famrewa, thank you very much for being a very good partner. These guys are partners, so they come with different, specialties and different skills, that we put together, for that wealth management, that we're talking about today. And of course, before I close, I would like to thank the Cordros team who have put this together. Bolawa, once again, the managing director, well done. Ifeoma Odom, thank you very much. Or maybe Alamina, that young lady is something else, she's been, everywhere in the last 3 weeks. And of course, Kofuorola, Wale, thank you for putting this together. So thank you very much. And of course, we won't be here. This is not just a conversation without us wanting to get to know you more. For some clients that some prospects that we really don't know a lot about. So our experts of investment analysts and investor advisors will be in touch with you regularly, talking to you about, the, various opportunities, that we have, in this investment climate, and how we can help you to build your asset, how we can help you to grow your asset, how we can help you to consolidate your assets, and of course, how we can help you to transfer those assets to the next generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to
the Cordros team for hosting this. And, you know, we've only gone so far into it, but I have no doubt that by the end of it, you'll be extremely grateful. It's really, really great to have these conversations that we're having. Now, I'm trying to see how we can move this along very quickly, but at the same time, get the most value for it. So I will just move on now to invite our next speaker, who is in person this time, and he will be talking about wealth preservation and family protection, comprehensive planning solutions. He brings a lot to the table. You can see his bio up there on the screen. He is the Managing Director, Estate Planning Consultant at IPG Holden. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Sven Nicholas Housechild.
All right. Thank you very much for inviting me. My name is Sven Nicholas Houdenchild, MD of IPG Howden, Switzerland. Pleasure to be here. It's not my first time. Actually, I'm traveling to Nigeria since about 10 years, since we founded the Swiss office back in 2015. It's my 6th trip this year. 6th trip this year. September trip already booked. Please allow me some holidays in August. My family will appreciate. I do have the pleasure to present a fairly new concept to you today, a concept which is quite established in other parts of the world, but maybe not that well known in Africa. So that's my job, to create awareness, to introduce you to the concept of international universal life, guaranteed whole of life insurance as a comprehensive wealth planning solution. On the next slide, you see that the IPG Howden Group belongs to Howden Brookaging Group, which has about 15,000 people, employees globally, active in 100 countries, headquartered in London city centre. IPG Howden, therein we got taken over by the Howden Group. We are the specialized arm, life insurance brokerage arm, serving international high net worth clients globally. We do that since 45 years, and our strength is to advise clients, typically resident in emerging markets, on wealth preservation, family protection, and we do have access to some of the world's largest insurance companies willing to issue their policies to clients resident in Nigeria, in Brazil, in China, in Mexico, emerging markets, because clients in these parts of the world, they have exactly the same needs like an American high net worth client, but you may don't find that solution locally. And if you may find it locally, it's maybe dominated in a local currency. It's regulated by the local regulator. And I guess at the end of the day, it's all about diversification. So we want to offer a solution which is maybe outside the county, which will help you to diversify from a geographical perspective, from a currency perspective, but also from an asset class perspective. And as you will see, what we do is not just life insurance, as you may know it. It is an international recognized asset class available for Nigerian clients. I mean, obviously, wealth planning, wealth preservation planning, I guess the need for wealth planning is ever since there. We want to make sure that successful businessmen and businesswomen which have been able to accumulate substantial wealth over the last decades can preserve their wealth for self-consumption first, but then obviously hand it over that wealth to the next generation most efficiently. I guess we want to avoid a dilution of wealth, which can happen at the transfer because of taxes, because of debts to be repaid, because of family conflicts. And I guess if you put up a proper estate plan, you can avoid such conflicts, you can preserve harmony within the family, and you can preserve your wealth for the next generation. Now, as an IPG Howden employee, as an IPG Howden consultant, we try to follow the client's lifeline, and we believe that at every point in time we can help our clients with our solution. So let's look at that chart. I guess it all starts with wealth accumulation. Clients between 30 to 50 years old, they typically accumulate wealth, right? They have high income, but maybe low savings. And typically at that time, I'm 44 years old, I know myself, I have 2 young daughters, wonderful daughters, which I want to protect. I'm traveling a lot, I have a decent income, but what's happening if something happens to me tomorrow? My savings are limited, my family is in trouble if I'm no longer here. So at that time, we do have the need to protect our families, protect them against the worst case scenario. Life is unexpected, it can happen tomorrow, if I like it or not, it's reality. But also businesses, of course. Most of our clients at that age are successful business people. They are leading ventures, and the venture is highly reliable, highly depending on that person. Now, maybe they're able to build a venture with a value of 50 million. But if the strong man, if the founder, if the leader is passing away tomorrow, that venture is no more value 50, it maybe has a value of 5 million only. So these people also want to protect their businesses against the unexpected. So we can also help on that. Secondly, it's about wealth preservation. And I guess that's something we discuss with our clients in a range of 40, maybe to 60. These are clients which have accumulated substantial wealth, which are still very active in the business, and they do have maybe more sophisticated needs to preserve wealth, to further accumulate wealth over time, still protect their families, because children are maybe 15 years old, just about leaving the country to study abroad, so they have foreign university fees to be paid, so still have a protection need, but obviously already have a preservation need, and we do have the right solution to help clients on this. 60 plus. About a third of my clients is 60 years plus. Now you ask yourself, why do they need life insurance at 60? They don't need life insurance because they're very wealthy. But no matter how wealthy our clients are, what they need at every point in time is diversification. And we can help our clients to diversify their assets, to protect their assets, and to preserve their wealth to the next generation, as initially indicated. Our solution is commonly known as an estate plan. Life insurance, as we will see, is actually legally kept outside the estate. So if something happens to the patriarch or the matriarch, all the assets fall under probate. And one or the other knows the issue which can come up when it comes to probate. Blocked accounts, disputes, conflicts, fights, court cases. We've seen nasty things in the past. And moreover, the family is suffering. The wealth will be diluted and the funds are not accessible till this has been sorted out. That can take years. So having an asset which is outside the estate, which doesn't follow probate, paying out immediately, tax-free, outside the country, in hard currency like dollars, that is just helpful for many of our clients. So estate planning is a key. Wealth preservation that's what we want to achieve, and ensure that the wealth accumulated can be transferred efficiently to the next generation to secure the future of our next generation. Now, maybe on the next slide, let me explain how our solution works. Life insurance. You all know how life insurance works. The solution we offer is issued by some of the world's largest life insurance companies, mainly Canadian life insurance company. As a matter of fact, the 2 largest Canadian companies which are willing to issue their policies to clients resident in Africa. Size matters in our business because we talk substantial amounts. We talk life coverage of $20 million, $50 million. That leads to significant premiums, which are claims which are paid out in 30 years down the road. So size matters. If you want to enter into such a transaction, you want to make sure that your partner is as reputable and financially sound as possible, because hopefully the claims payout will kick in only 30 years down the road. So we do have access to some of the world's largest companies, having created bespoke, tailor-made solutions to meet the specific needs of high net worth clients. So it's life insurance, but it's different to what you know. First, the duration. Our solution, once incepted, has no contractual terminal date. It pays out at demise. Now you have 100% certainty it will pay out one day, if we like it or not. You have 100% certainty that the insured amount of $10 million will be there for the family one day. God forbid, it could happen tomorrow or 40 years down the road. But it's linked to demise, and demise is certain, so the investment is certain. You know exactly that the insured amount, $5 million, $10 million, will be there for the family. No matter what's happening to your business, to the local economy, to the global financial markets, that amount will be there. And that helps you to preserve wealth to the next generation, and that amount will be transferred immediately tax-free to the next generation, to your loved ones, wives, children, or maybe grandchildren, or maybe your trust, or maybe, you mentioned it, Chairman, charity. You may want to leave a legacy. You may want to support somebody which is outside your family. Obviously, with a confidential payout of a life insurance, you can distribute these funds directly to the person you like. Funding. Now, the $10–20 million guaranteed paid out at demise, that doesn't come for free, right? That doesn't come for free. It's linked to a premium to be invested. And that premium, of course, is linked to life expectancy. So the older we get, the more expensive it will become. The healthier we are, the cheaper it is. The more female we are, the cheaper it is. Females, I guess some of the men can support. Typically, females are more expensive than men, at least my wife. But not in life insurance. In life insurance, my wife is cheaper than I am because she has a longer life expectancy. And if we do estate plans for a couple at 65 years old, typically the husband is 65, maybe madame is only 60, female. So we do the estate plan not on him, we do it on madame because she will be cheaper. So the premium, as it could become a significant investment, can be funded with various options. So there is a single premium investment. I give you an example. To fund a $10 million payout, lifelong at demise, at age 40, there's a $1 million investment required. 1 million will generate 10 million at demise, guaranteed for life, one payment done. Now, $1 million is a lot of money. So there are options available. Either you take a loan from a private bank, a loan of a value of about 75%. So 750K is funded similar to a mortgage by a bank, and the bank would take the contract as collateral, and the client only pays 250K to incept a 10 million contract, and then obviously service the loan over time, exactly if you purchase a property. Now, interest rates are fairly expensive these days. We look at about 6.5% in US dollar. That's maybe not that attractive. Alternatively, we could set up a funding plan. We split that $1 million into 5, 10, 15, 20 yearly installments. So we can, year by year, put some money aside to fund the contract, which can help us to build up that total amount. Whatever we define as a funding plan can be adjusted during term. We quite often set up a 20-year funding plan, knowing that the clients will pay off the premiums earlier than expected because their financial situation will improve, they are successful, they will have the capabilities to pay off earlier than expected. So the funding is very, very flexible. Various options are available. Together with Cordros, with other financial partners, we will find the right solution which fits to the client's need and financial capabilities. Lastly, and that's very important to understand, where does my money go? Because I mentioned before, it's great to do something for the next generation. Of course, we love them. But it's still your money for the time being. It's your wealth you have created. So we want to make sure that the wealth you create will be accessible and available if needed during your lifetime. So actually what we do, or what the insurance company does, they set up an insurance savings account in the client's name. So all the premium dollars invested as a one-shot or over time go into the same savings account in your name, and which will earn annual interest. That interest is linked to an underlying investment strategy. Funds are managed by the company, by the insurance company, but you have certain options on how the fund should be invested. So keep in mind, the premium you invest go into a savings account, earn interest over time, and that's little curve, it will increase over time. So that's your money. These are your gains. This is your underlying principle, and this is accessible during lifetime if you need money or if the insurance is no longer needed, right? Maybe the children, they grow older. You may sell a business. You have a lot of cash yourself. There's nobody depending on you anymore. You want to cash back. And you walk away with a gain after 10, 15, 20 years. So you were insured for free, you had a decent investment, and you walk away with a gain. But of course, if something happens to you, the big payout, the levelized line on that graph, that will be there for the family. On the next slide, we see the major needs of our clients. And that is based on experience. First and most important, and that's always key, it's about the family. It is a life insurance, first and foremost. It is there to protect the loved ones. The children, the grandchildren, the wife, or the husband. It's a life insurance which secures the financial future of the dependents after a tragical event and the matriarch is no longer there to support him. Secondly, it's about liquidity. Quite often our clients are asset rich, cash poor, so they don't want to leave just non-liquid assets. They also want to leave liquid assets which can help the family to pay off some liabilities such as UK estate taxes or personal debts or guarantees. Thirdly, it's about diversification. Our solution, as being internationally recognized, can help our clients to diversify their assets. It's a safe investment managed by one of the world's largest insurance companies, outside the country, US dollar denominated, with a guaranteed payout at a certain point in time. And lastly, estate planning, wealth preservation planning. I guess the earlier we start thinking about this topic, the better. At the end of the day, what we do is wealth planning. We do wealth planning. We're international wealth planners. Our solution can help to protect your family and preserve your wealth, as mentioned before. It is a planning solution for retirement, inheritance planning, investment planning, asset diversification planning. It is an investment solution, nevertheless, which will allow you to access these funds if you need them during lifetime. It is a solution that protects your family and your wealth. And lastly, it is a solution which is highly flexible during term. We have a very proud retention rate of 97%. That means 3 out of 100 clients cancel the policy during term. The majority of clients stick to the policy because we can adjust the policy. Life is changing, as we see. Needs are changing, but we can adjust the policy during lifetime. This is no mass market solution. This is a bespoke, tailor-made solution which meets your needs at any point in time. Thank you, Wale, for the partnership. If you have any questions, I'm back in September, but meanwhile, please contact Cordros. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Sven. And as you know, I'm going to have you back up here in a minute, and they would have the opportunity to ask you some questions. So right now we want to move on to, if you like, the closing segment of today's program, which is the panel session, where I'm going to bring some really distinguished professionals who will give some very, very valuable insight into various dimensions of wealth planning, and how we can really enhance that in these times. So I'm happy to invite them to the stage one by one. Now, in the interest of time, I apologize in advance. I will simply just call out your names, and I do believe that as I do so, their profiles will be shown on the screen. So, let's go. First, I'll be inviting Esiri Agbeyi, Africa Family Business Leader at PwC. A round of applause for her. I also invite Ifoma Udom, Managing Director, Cordros Trustees. We'll also like to have Sven back on stage now. Sven, if you would join us on stage. Please, a round of applause for him. And he was here earlier. Please invite, with a round of applause, please welcome Oladipo Ogunjobi, Artist and Creative Director, 1111 Project. A round of applause for him. Thank you. And we also have Chioma Okigbo, CEO of Mod Management Company. Please, a round of applause for her. All right, so that is your panel. First of all, just some brief... Okay, so the future of wealth. And I want to start with you, Esiri. Maybe you can give some perspective, because I'm sure we have in the room many people who... certainly everybody is situated in a family, but of course we're going to get into the whole issue of family offices and all of that. But in your view, there's obviously a delicate dynamic that many families have to navigate. So everything from what is the appropriate structure to dealing with making sure that there are healthy family dynamics, and if there are unhealthy family dynamics, how do we manage that? So I just wanted to hear your thoughts about really beginning to address the whole issue of wealth in that context. These realities that most people, of course, have to deal with. So let me hear your perspective on that before we move on to other issues.
All right. Thank you, Wale. I don't know if it's...
It will come up in a second. Just go,
Okay.
keep talking.
All right. So I think this is a very interesting conversation for me, and it's something I'm very passionate about. I've worked with a lot of families, and when I moved to New York, one of the striking things I found was we did see that Nigerian family businesses would sometimes come to our offices in New York, and they would be very particular about saying they wanted to work with, the foreigners. But there were gaps, and some of the gaps were in the fact that we would find that the family businesses had local assets that they hadn't thought of, and then they were investing in offshore assets, and there was no umbrella structure for the two. The second thing that drove me into this is also the fact we've had big brands over the years in Nigeria, decades ago. Everyone knows about the popular MK Rapiola. Unfortunately, his businesses have not outlived him. And we see that very often with a lot of family businesses in Africa. When we go into academia, you don't find too many case studies on family businesses in Africa that have succeeded generations. When you go into Asia, you find family businesses that have lived for 100 years. The last article I wrote was on Lego. A lot of our children play with Lego. When you look behind that family business, the structure behind is interesting. When Lego had their biggest issue in the 90s, their family office was valued at $190 or $160 million. They brought in a consultant. Today, 20 years later, the family business is valued at $300 billion.
Billion, with a B.
Yes, billion. It's interesting what structures they have, and that's what I do. And those structures rely on the soft blocks and the hard blocks.
Can you just speak at a very high level, what type of structures are we talking about?
Yeah,
that can make that huge difference that you just spoke of.
And I think one of the structures really is the fact that there's a lot of attention paid to governance, a lot of attention paid to tax, and then that structure is mirrored not only at the corporate level, but also at the family level. So the dynamics in terms of relationship between founder and next generation is encapsulated within a family governance structure. And there are building blocks for that, from the bodies that you set up to the documents that you write. So what we do is help you build those structures, the bodies, and write those documents, and help sure you implement them, because sometimes the little detail is in the family assembly meetings that you have, the fun parties that you have, bringing the discussions of the business into the family light. One meeting I had, the children had no clue that their fathers had, or their mother had a family business. They just knew money was coming home. You know, and some of the things we're doing is consolidating that. So yes, you might have investments offshore, you might have offshore. You need to bring them into an umbrella and start to groom your kids to understand what's there and what they should do to take it forward.
Thank you very much. Obviously, that's very high level, and hopefully we can come back to you in a moment. But Chioma, I'd like to go to you because clearly this is what you do, family businesses. Can you just give us your perspective on this issue about balancing family values and financial objectives in this whole attempt to manage the wealth of the family?
Thank you, Asiri. Wale. Yeah, I was listening
right
to
there.
Asiri very attentively, clearly. Balancing the objectives of the family.
Yes, financial objectives, what they want to
With-
achieve,
yes.
and the values,
values.
those families stand for. Has that, from your experience, been a challenge in managing family businesses?
It's not so much a challenge as that a lot of people didn't make money from building family businesses in Nigeria. So it's a problem. Where you have, if you take the statistic that there are maybe 10% of the population that is wealthy, and you take, again, the statistic that a lot of people that made money made it either as contractors or doing something or working for government. There is no family business that they have. The values are very difficult to describe or to formulate that you're passing on. In my experience, I've worked with people who have been in the other place, and since I moved to Lagos, I used to live in Abuja, so my reality is kind of different. Moving to Lagos, I'm beginning to work more with clients who actually have businesses, who have set up either law firms,
Businesses, all kinds.
whatever business it is. So it's easier to have that conversation with them around the values that they need to create and tying those values to their objectives. So, for instance, someone who has clear ethical, values and considerations and all of that, when they're setting up their family office, you would see it resonate in everything they're defining. You see the objectives are clear. They're very clear about how they want to build or transfer wealth to the next generation. They want to, the kind of businesses that the family would not engage in, the business would not take. They put some fine print to it. So it's a lot easier to have that conversation at that point. But it's important in formulating the objectives that you define your personal value and the value of the family. Right. It's very critical because it's the bedrock of everything that you're doing. The way we want our children to... Let me give you just a small example.
Okay,
so,
very brief.
Very brief example. My husband was traveling to the east and he was driving my car. I got to Benin and we had bought the car from Cordros. They asked for import papers. And he didn't have it in the car. It was not required document for driving. And they insisted that he must give them bribe so that they would release the car. He left the car in Benin. It was a very painful process for me because it was my car. And I didn't have a car.
Wow.
But I understood the value he had. I understood his decision, his insistence that he must not do things the Nigerian way. You understand?
Right.
So he came back to Lagos and got all the import papers and went back to pick the car. They're taking it to Owerri. Didn't matter to him. He still went to Owerri and brought the car. In fact, they brought it eventually, custom. They brought it by themselves, you know. But the important lesson for my children was that you must stand for something. And it translates to how you raise your children and how you transfer wealth and how you bring them into the family business. If you have not set proper values, those children will fritter that money away no matter what you do.
Understood. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Okay. So I want to move now to another issue, and that is the issue of preserving and transferring wealth. Ifeoma, I want you to speak to that because clearly you run the trustee business. There are obviously some tools. Earlier I mentioned Mark Twain and how he was able to use his will to preserve some objectives that he had. So talk to us about how trusts and wills, estate planning in general, can be used to preserve and to transfer wealth across generations.
I mean, obviously, if I just start with a thought that crossed my mind, I think this works. I think
it does. I just think it's more comfortable for you, but it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you. I'll just start with a thought that crossed my mind when she was speaking about Nigeria and the transfer of wealth over years and why it has not been. And for me, the reason is very simple, and I believe it to be true, but I don't quote me because it's not something I know as a fact from evidence. But essentially, what I've heard a long time ago is that wealth creators essentially mostly give birth to wealth dissipators, and the wealth dissipators give birth to wealth creators. So you find that generation.
It's always a cycle, eh?
Yes, this is some sort of cycle. So if you are not deliberate, as she, alluded to, as is the Nigerian situation, you will not have that wealth creation passed on. So even when your children understand and your values, they may not fully understand in depth the kind of work that it takes to transfer it to the next generation. And so there has to be something deliberate. So if you can afford a family office, either by yourself or as, what they do, that's great. But, my typical advice to everyone is, even when you can't, do it in that structure, you need to be very deliberate about your estate plan, and a will not suffice. As we all know, wills are public and they are expensive in the sense that I don't mean setting them up as expensive. By the end of the day, I'm definitely sure that nobody in this room is going to be willing to pay 10% of what they have in their bank account to anybody as a tax. But that's essentially what you do when you allow it to pass through probate, essentially. So in that sense, it is very expensive. And you have other options like using a corporate structure. But I mean, I don't want to mention too many names, but it was public. So you all know what happened with F.R.A. Williams and the companies. So you have a company, but then they have to take decisions together. And you remember, they are wealth dissipators because you created the wealth. So they will dissipate it very quickly. A trust, on the other hand, allows you to pass on those values almost by force. But I don't think it should be done by force. I completely agree with her about family governance structure and the HR process within the family. I completely agree with what our chairman said. There has to be a HR function within the family. Each child needs to understand the value that they can bring. They may not come into the business, but they must understand that whatever it is we've spent so much money training them to do, can bring value to that family. So back to the point of the trust that I was going to, is the fact that within a trust structure, you can determine how you want to preserve your wealth, your main value. Most people don't know that Rockefeller Foundation, Nobel Prize, they all started with a small amount of money, maybe not so small then, but if you compare it to the value that they have now, it's because of their sustainability mindset. And those things, those decisions were taken years ago and set and cast firmly. So a trust is essentially the best way to do that, because any other means that you use will preserve it for you, but will not ensure that it is transferred into transgenerational wealth. Because they will dissipate it. Then maybe their children will now come and create, but that's not what you want. You want it to be, I don't want to go on too long, but that's essentially in a nutshell. Yeah.
No, it's so important, the point about trust and how they can be so efficient. You talked about taxes, for example. Okay, but let's move on to Sven, and hopefully we can come back to you in a moment. Sven, thanks so much for the presentation earlier. So insurance, it's another very important solution in wealth preservation and enhancement. So I want you to maybe take another few minutes to talk about that. Clearly your presentation is a solution, but what's in your view is the role of insurance solutions in wealth enhancement?
Well, first and most important, I guess I'm a big ambassador and fan of planning as such. And I'm not telling you that, it's all about life insurance. Not at all. I love to plan. I plan myself almost every career step, which school I want to go, which university, which topic, where do I specialize. All have a plan, which girl I want to marry, when I want to have my children. Now, why do I like to plan? Because if you have a plan, you can achieve your goals. Now, when it comes to the estate plan, it's maybe the most important plan you ever did, because you're no longer here to execute it. So you want to make sure that the plan is bulletproof, is set on solid grounds to be executed by somebody else. So I strongly support and advise and recommend that plan for retirement, plan for estate, make sure that what you have accumulated successful can be handed over efficiently. And there are experts all over. There are experts at Cordros, there are experts at Cordros Trustee, there are external experts like Kioma that help wealthy clients that are maybe specialized in one topic build up a business, but maybe not that savvy when it comes to estate and laws and financial planning, get the specific advice. And therein, of course, life insurance is a tool, it's a fantastic solution which has legal benefits, financial benefits from a diversification perspective. You
and
may
also
have
efficient,
company
I
assets. Yeah, you may have company shares, you may have real estate, you have bank account, but I strongly advise and recommend have the international life insurance as a fourth major asset class, which can bring benefits to the family.
Can you just take a minute to discuss the efficiency that life insurance offers in terms of things like taxes and so forth?
Well, actually, it's pretty simple. As mentioned, I guess first and most important, it's outside the estate. So it doesn't even need to be structured in a trust. There's no trustee involved. It's outside the estate. It pays out immediately to the beneficiary nominated tax-free. In most of the counties, tax-free. The solution actually has been established in the US to cover for 45% estate taxes. Now, I give you that example of Robin Williams. You know the actor Robin Williams, Good Morning Vietnam and some other movies. He had a wonderful trust structure, nominating his family, his second family, different children, and he left that big house to the family, to the second family. Wonderful mansion. But he didn't leave any cash. So the family couldn't afford to maintain the property. So they were forced to sell it. So what do we recommend? Plan ahead. Where are the liabilities? Where are your assets? You may want to integrate a life insurance which pumps cash into the trust to secure the school fees of the grandchildren, to clear mortgages, debts, etc. So it's all about planning. I guess other than that, life insurance is a international recognized asset class, high lending value, etc.
Thank you very much, Sven. All right, so let's go to Dapo now. So Dapo, I think your conversation will be a little more different because now we're looking at how we can enhance that wealth a lot more in terms of growing it. And you are in a very interesting space, art. Maybe tell us more about the possibilities. And earlier we were speaking about technology. Maybe you can speak to that as well, what that is enabling in terms of new opportunities to preserve and even grow your wealth through art?
Thank you so much. So when I was going through the documents that were displaying the charts of the biggest sectors in Nigeria, and finance, digital particularly showed up, technology actually showed up. We all know that art grows in value depending on how good the artist is and how good the art is. But now, bringing in technology and seeing how technology is changing the world so well, adding art and technology is a gold mine, and that's something I've been able to do with augmented reality. The idea of using augmented reality infused in fine art is something that is going to grow. Like what I've really done, I tell my colleagues, what I've really done is to create a 3310, meaning there's going to be an iPhone X, there's going to be an iPhone 14, there's going to be a Vision Pro. It's just going to go bigger in that space. So when I see what I've created with the 1111 project, Africa's first augmented reality art experience, is to create something that would outlive me. I had no idea about generation. I mean, I was just so young when I designed it, so I wasn't thinking about generational wealth. But now I've seen that that is what it is, you know. So I walked into the room, and three things struck me. I said, in this room, what we have is the physical, the digital, and the spiritual. The spiritual is something we don't see, so we tend to overlook it. And when I'm speaking of spiritual, I'm not saying religion, I'm saying spirits. I'm not spirit beings, but spirits, right? So we have the physical, we have the digital, and we have the spirits. And personally, as an artist, I was focused on the physical and the spiritual. Then the digital came and just completed the equation. In Nigeria and Africa as a whole, we have great art. We make great art. When you talk about knock art, Benin art, we have great art that was taken from us, right? But a new generation of art creation is coming, and I hope this is not taken from us this time. I hope this is not taken from us this time. But a new generation of art is coming that is going to give artists, musicians, visual artists, musicians who are also using technology to amass unthinkable wealth, right? I'm saying artists are going to become so wealthy, and it's going to be so surprising. But it shouldn't be, because, like I said, we've always been exceptional in the space of fine arts through time. And being in the room and informing the audience about augmented reality, particularly because, like I said, just to say again that augmented reality right now is 3310 of our time, right? So the more we practice, the more we sell, the more we get support, it's just going to add up eventually.
Yeah. If you can just illustrate why you are so big on the impact of augmented reality on art and its value. Earlier you were speaking about some dynamics that are happening with artificial intelligence and particularly augmented reality. Can you just speak briefly to that as to why you think that could accelerate the value of augmented reality?
Okay, so what I want to do, please, if you can quickly just put up the gallery, so that I'll just, like, the VR gallery that was showing, if you could just put up the display. Mm-hmm. Yes, if it's possible. But the integration of technology and fine art is what we can see. So this is a virtual gallery. This doesn't exist in real life. This is completely virtual. But you would see artworks on display. And these artworks are not just what you see with your eyes. When you pull up your phone, and you can actually test it. Now, once you pull up your phone and put it in front of these artworks, you see something else. For the horse that just went by, you see an inspirational message. So now art can literally speak to you, right? Art can literally speak to you. So when we know that art can speak now, there is a new chain of possibilities.
Even our panelists are trying it.
There is a new chain of possibilities for people to experience something new and just do something new, do something very new. I'm sure you know about Apple releasing the Vision Pro, that thing where you put in your face and you can see more. Like I said, we will not continue to use the iPhone 14 forever. So we are going to grow. We are going to grow and grow and grow. Technology is going to become more interesting. And augmented reality, particularly, so there's augmented reality, there's virtual reality. Yeah. Virtual reality is what you're seeing on screen. But augmented reality is not something you can just see, right?
But again, and because of time, I want you to speak to where the growth will come in terms of the value of that art.
Okay, so like I explained earlier, art on its own without technology grows.
Yes.
Right? When we think about Basquiat, we think about Leonardo da Vinci, we think about these artworks being in a museum covered with bulletproof glass. You ask yourself, why is an art piece covered with a bulletproof glass? Right? So we know that good art is going to grow. In value, in popularity, is going to grow. But when you now add technology, now you can just click a link below. Right? So when you now add technology to it, we know technology is growing, we know art is growing, the growth is there. Right? So if you collect like an art piece, like a limited edition of the 1111 project, you collect one and you hang it on your wall. It's something 10 years down the line, you pass on to your child. You buy it for $100 today. 10 years down the line is $10,000. 20 years down the line is $100,000.
But why will it go up to that level? Why do you say so?
Because of its interesting. When I look
you
at
said something about limited edition.
Yeah, limited edition, but it's not just the limited edition, because when you think about art of Basquiat, why did it go up? You know, so it's character. Like I said, I studied fine arts. I'm speaking to the future of wealth at Cordros. Now, like when my followers see it, they're just going to perceive more value in my person. So it's going to make some people get the artwork, like, oh, this guy must know what he's doing and he's going to get the artwork, right? So as much as I continue to grow in my profession and practice, people who collected my artwork in 2020 are just going to be like, yo, I have this on my wall, and it's worth so much. And of course, because there's a structure to it, there's a limited edition. So say you have edition 1 of 1111, you have edition 20, you have edition 23. By the time you have edition 11 of 1111, it's done. So let's say everybody in this room has a piece, and people outside this room don't have the piece. You know so that people are going to come for it. People are going to come for it because people want what other people want sometimes, you know.
Understood. Thank you very much. Explanation. So what we want to do now is to take this to the audience. If you do have any questions for the panelists, this is a good time to ask. And before we wrap things up this afternoon.
How do you mitigate against the risks? How do you hedge against the risks? I mean, for instance, the insurer also reinsures, doesn't he? And then the funds are also invested. So in a global financial crisis, the investment can go bust, can be impaired, can be depleted, or disappear altogether. So how do you hedge against the risk?
Okay, thank you. Can we take more questions and then we'll go to back to the... We can use that to wrap things up.
Well, thanks for your question. I keep this very short, right? Yes, obviously there is a risk. If you go for a guaranteed whole-of-life solution, the only risk that the solution is not paying out is actually if the issuer is going bust. Because, again, from a life expectancy perspective, it will pay out, right? We just don't know when. The issuer, that's the only risk. Initially, I mentioned that size matters. That's why we want to go with the largest companies, strong track record, long track record established back in the 1800s, very strong financial ratings, and obviously the policy issued from a very stable country, Canada, Bermuda, which are AAA countries. Insurance, as you pointed out correctly, there's always a primary insurer, which covers a certain part of the payout, and there's the reinsurers involved. Also there, the companies we work with, we know exactly the reinsurance companies. It's the largest Swiss Re, Munich Re, and RGA. They mainly back the solutions. But more important is what's happening if an insurance company goes bust. Insurance companies have two businesses. First business is receiving premium, paying claims. That's their core business. Looking at the car insurance, you pay a car premium, they pay a claim. That's the core business, premium versus claim. That business is typically profitable. Should be at least. The other business, it's not always, but it should be. The other business is the asset management. What are they doing with the premium during duration? Now look at AIG 2008. AIG went bust. But not because of the insurance business was unhealthy, because they messed up the investments. AIA, you know Manchester United, AIA, it's still the 6th largest insurance company worldwide. But the the asset management go bust. So what happened? The regulator stepped in, and that every regulator will do so, steps in, takes over management, and sells the profitable pieces to other companies, or ensures that the insurance company can just reopen. No single policyholder lost money in 2008 with AIG. So there are some checks and balances in place. And at the end of the day, investment management from an insurance company, you should never compare this to a bank. It's long-term, it's boring. There are no big bonuses paid to the investment managers, different to banks. I would assume that people are a bit less greedy there. So if you have your money with a bank, you should be comfortable to put it with your life insurance as well.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joe Ahibe. I'm a chartered surveyor and valuer. And I would like to thank Cordros for this opportunity. I'd like to address my question to the MD of Cordros Trustees. I'm an estate surveyor, so I see we deal with properties. And we see what happens with estates. People work very hard, acquire a lot of real estate. At the end of their life, they try to pass it on to their children by wills. And even when they drop a very good will, there's always a problem. Most of the time, these assets are tied in court for years, and they deteriorate. Okay, so now people also try to see whether they can give out those properties in their lifetime as deed of gifts. You can give them to the children, but they still have issues. So the business about the trusteeship, would like you to educate us more and see whether that can really help to solve the problem and preserve wealth going forward. Because most of the time, the name you mentioned, those chaps are my very good friends, so let's try and keep it, what's it called, Yeah, but it happens a lot. We have several of them like that in this country. How do we move what's it called, wealth to the next generation and generation after that one when we have issues like this? So thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. I see that you zeroed in on real estate, so I'll stay on that because that's actually the most complicated. Not complicated because it's not so much that it's complicated as that it is expensive if the structure wasn't set up that way in the first place. So as we know, if you're trying to buy property, you pay statutory fees, and the same will apply if you are transferring it. It doesn't matter that it's going to a trust structure and that you remain the primary beneficiary of it. They will still have those costs to pay. And now, after you have amassed significant wealth over time and you now wish to do it as a whole, it becomes very expensive. So one of the things that trustees do, aside from just doing what is legally required, is manage the cost and expense, aside from the property tax and other cost savings, is figure out how it can cost you less. Now, some people have done it in such a way that the companies are owned by SPVs. The properties are owned by SPVs. That's fantastic. Whenever we hear that, we're so happy because it means that it's going to cost you little or nothing to actually have it transferred to the trust. And yes, that will sort out the problem. So we tend to advise based on each person's case and the nature of the property that's involved. A lot of people you find, they just have properties. Oh, when I go to that country, I stay there. Nothing it's not there. Oh, until something will be there for a bit, and then it's just really wasting. And then you're now wanting to incur additional expense. And, mind you, these properties are all over the world with different jurisdictions. So there's not one size-fits-all answer for everyone. And sometimes we advise, especially if the property is not something you're sentimentally attached to or intend to hold on to for a long time, we advise that sometimes it's better that you sell some of them and then you gradually come up with a plan for how you want to transfer the others onto the trust structure. Because when it is sitting under the trust structure, then it really sorts out all the problems. Because at the end of the day, the legal ownership resides in the trustees. Your clear instructions on how you want that property used to continue to preserve the family's wealth is clearly stated, and then that just goes on and really does save you the issues that you're talking about. Because of course, you find that a lot of families need to even borrow to take on the property because it's so significant, the cost. The government will value the assets, and then you have to pay for that cost before you even consider whether the family or the children are going to sell it or use it as you wished or otherwise. So I don't know if I have kind of answered your question the way you wanted it, because it's a bit of a broad conversation, and we usually go into specifics, but
And I'm sure
have I...
I'm sure there will be very situational issues around
Exactly.
that as well.
So that's why I'm asking if
but I think to a broad, to broad level, you've already highlighted a couple of things. Trusts can help. SPVs can help. So hopefully all that is valuable.
SPVs under a trust is what I've specifically
so we need to get into the nitty-gritty of it. Okay.
Yeah.
We have a question at the back.
I want to speak to the topic mentioned by the last speaker on the SPVs. Because basically, even if you're going to transfer title from the SPVs, legally speaking, as far as Nigeria is concerned, you still have to pay consent fees for transfer of title. So you can imagine problems that you encounter when perhaps you warehouse properties in an SPV and then you want to transfer it to the trust. Legally speaking, you're still going to have to pay double cost for that transfer. So maybe you want to speak on that. I was wondering if also as a structure, one could have SPVs that are warehoused under
management like Cordros, where legal ownership is technically still with the settlor or the testator or the owners of those properties.
Right.
You know, but at the end of the day, it's the trust that is being paid to manage the asset. Maybe you need to speak to that, and also warehousing generally for assets.
All right.
Second link to that would be how you manage transnational assets. I think we need to speak to that also on the panel.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So transnational assets, and maybe if you can, a short answer to what is the most efficient way?
No, so
what would be your advice?
No, so I'll make it really quick. I mean, the second question is a lengthy conversation, and they have various options for it. But in terms of the first conversation, it's very simple. The intention is not to transfer the assets out of the SPV. The intention is for the SPV to be owned by the trust and the assets held by the SPV. So why I use the term SPV is because you are not talking about a company that is doing business. You're talking about a company that is set up just to hold real estate. The shares of that company get transferred to the trustee. Essentially what that means is that whatever the company owns, the trust owns, and the value is created in that structure. And so therefore you save that cost, and there's no time when you're actually transferring it from the SPV to the individuals, except the individual specifically says, and I've had a few clients that do that, at a certain age, this child should have this property, and then of course they've borne that in mind, and of course income has come from it such that they know that it's going to be able to pay that cost. But typically that's not the intention. We don't intend to transfer it out of the property, out of the SPV. It's the SPV itself that moves from one person to the other, rather than the company, rather than the title itself. So that saves you that cost, definitely. In terms of transnational wealth, that's becoming more and more of an issue now, because you have families that may be in 3 different continents. Children are going to school in one jurisdiction. You are trying to keep family wealth more preserved by taking it away from less stable currencies. I mean, everyone knows what I'm talking about here. And essentially people are moving their exposures to other jurisdictions. Sometimes you can have just a Nigerian trust that owns those assets, because, you know, the world is so global now that you don't need to be from a country to own assets there. Sometimes you need professionals in those jurisdictions. The US is a perfect example. They have God knows how many legal regimes, depending on where the property is. So you may need experts in those jurisdictions, but the ownership can reside in a Nigerian trust. The ownership could also reside in an offshore trust. I told you that was a long answer. So, but I mean, essentially, we can talk maybe at lunch. I mean, I'll give you a bit more insight into that.
Obviously, lunch is served right after this, so maybe you can also get more details from her in the meantime. But I really need to begin to wind this down. But I wanted to get back to Michael now. And Michael, my question essentially was, from all your interactions with doing business in Nigeria, what have been the most common missteps you've seen in terms of how many people have organized their wealth? And obviously, I want to believe that you've advised them in that respect.
Yeah, there's a couple of
things that I think is very important to do. I mean, like I tried to mention during my short talk, wealth management is a very bespoke journey. I think a mistake that a lot of clients make and families make is just trying to do something which appears to have worked for somebody else, or something that even worked for a parent of theirs, or there's a traditional way of saying, oh, I just put my money in real estate and it's worked for me. So some people just want to repeat the same process that somebody else has gone through. I think it's important to understand the journey is bespoke, and that's why when some clients ask me, or some partners that I work with just say, what would you advise I do in this situation? Or where do you think I should put my money now? It's, we have to really rewind the discussion to understand what that money is to you. Is it 1% of your wealth? Is it 100% of your wealth? If so, the answer that you will be presented with is completely different. What are your priorities? Are you moving into a phase now where you're winding down your career, you have your kids, your grandkids, your forever home, multiple holiday homes, and now you're moving into a stage of retirement where having your time and your health as your priority versus accumulating wealth? If so, the answer is different as well. The point I'm trying to make really is that a mistake that many people make, not just Nigerian clients, but clients from all walks of life, is that you see what has worked for somebody else and you try to emulate that. Or you take advice which is not bespoke, and you take advice which is not tailored to your particular financial situation with your priorities in mind, with your interests and your objectives in mind, and then you implement that advice. That advice then becomes, or that solution becomes very costly to undo in the future. Some people some clients ask me, or they tell me, I want to buy a property in London to rent out and make some income. I say, why? Let's rewind and talk about why you want to do that. When we get to the bottom of it and they realize there's several costs, several challenges, various taxes and so on, they realize that they're only going to be making 1-2% yield on that. If that's what they wanted, we could find better alternatives to creating that solution for them.
All
so
right,
I think, for a lot of clients, it's important to rewind. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Michael. I know that we have more questions in the room, but we are really running heavy now in terms of our schedule. So what I'll do now is just allow Esiri and Chioma to make maybe a few closing comments. Issue, maybe you can say a little bit more about practically how family offices can organize governance.
So the family office concept is not for everybody, first of all. It's just one of the governance bodies. You definitely need to ask questions around the asset size and the complexity of issues. When we mentioned secondly around, I think someone was saying transnational assets, what you also want to think about is what jurisdictions. The taxes will differ across jurisdictions. A good example is the US. If you have US citizens as kids, there are more complexities. You probably then want to think of a foreign grantor trust, which might not necessarily work in Nigeria. Then in terms of, bringing together family and making sure that there is cohesion, there are different levels of capital that you need to bear in mind when designing your governance structures. So we talk a lot about financial capital or wealth, but that's not the only thing you're passing on. There's social capital, there's human capital, there's spiritual capital. The forum for embracing or thinking or idealizing around all of this is something that naturally comes through a family office. But again, if you don't have capacity to manage one, you can actually form a pseudo family office.
What does that look like?
That looks like having several layers of decision making within the family. Where you have families that have different branches, it's always a good way to start. So you might have a family assembly where it's just fun-fair activities, but very shortly you're introducing business issues. You have a family council that may be a selection of different generation members, and then that family council will interact with the business structures. The business structures would ideally have a holding company at the top, and that holding company is the one that then interacts based on board of directors and all that with the family council. Right. And then I think the fundamental governance document is your constitution. The same way you have a MEMAT in a corporate structure, you would have a family constitution at the family level. And this is where you write and pen down what the wishes of the founder are collectively with the family in terms of growing the family forward. It's something the family needs to do together. And when you do it, there are heated moments trying to get to that point. But it's also a form of bonding and visualizing what the future might look like. This is what is typically missing with family businesses in Nigeria. And that, I think, is what we can capitalize on going forward and into building the economy.
Got it. Thank you very much. Chairman, my last question to you will be, obviously we've been hearing about the challenges of the Nigerian situation with the laws around wills, trusts, transferring title and so forth. But from your experience, what are the biggest challenges in organizing a family office in Nigeria? And over time, what have you learned in terms of the best way to manage that?
Thank you. I've run my multi-client family office now for 7 years, going into the 8th year. There are challenges. It's difficult to get clients to sit still and have these conversations and involve their children. The Nigerian, in my experience, and I don't want to generalize, but a lot of Nigerian men struggle to bring even their wives into the conversation about their wealth, the source of it, the activities around it, not to talk of their children.
If you can pause for a second, I just wanted to add a small layer to the question, and that is, what solutions have you found to these issues that you've encountered?
Yes, so one of the first things I do when I'm starting an engagement process with clients is to explain to them that if you want a family office structure, the first thing we have to do is to bring the family together. Even if we do it in layers and in stages, I must have you and your wife or wives in the same room and talk about these things. How much do they know? What is the level of information they have? Because for us to have this engagement, we must start from the known. Again, some speakers have alluded to it. You have to know where you are. You have to know what you have. Some people don't even have clarity on their own net worth. Okay, so you start from that basis and then you bring in the family. You start to create the governance structure that she mentioned. You talk about what the investment policy statement would then be once you've got the governance issues sorted out. What are you trying to achieve by having a family office? I have a client that said to me that what is his primary objective is that anybody, he's an only son, anybody that answers that his surname till forever, to perpetuity, that they must go to school. Because he knows that their family name is they're the only people that answer that name. So he says, anyone. So we've tried to capture that in creating, because we use the trust structure. Remember that in the family office, you also have to have a structure that covers what the client is doing. That way you can isolate each client. So some people choose a different structure. This particular client chose a trust structure. The family office is not designed to be an asset management business. We really is an administrative service. We interact with asset managers. We interact with insurance companies. We interact with the legal people, the trustees. So we set up a trust for this client that captured everything that was his objective. And we had to bring in the family to ensure that that fundamental idea was captured and will be retained. And it's in everything that drives that business. So in my experience, there are challenges, but I also find that there are people who are very open to understanding the options that are there available in the market, the things that you're proposing to them, they won't always accept everything. It's clear because clients are different. I can see my client and propose something which I think will be beneficial. I could propose it in year 2023, and it's in year 2026 that we end up coming back to that conversation and he's saying, that thing you were telling me now I'm beginning to see why you were saying it then, and we come back to it. So I find that for me, continuous learning, continuous understanding of the environment. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not even a I just managed a wealth management company in the past. But I'm not a technical person. I'm just a relationship person. So I build based on relationships. I listen a lot to what the client wants. And I just give them the solution that helps them achieve their goals. That's the bottom line.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very well said. So hopefully there has been a lot of learning so far. I know that we had other questions and we still have lunch, so you will still have an opportunity to interact with the panelists. But at this point, I'd like to ask that you please put your hands together again for them. I think very valuable insight. Before you leave, please, I'd like to invite the other speakers to the stage so that we can take a photograph. Also, I'd like to invite the MD of Cordros Asset Management, Wale, to join them as well. And I think it's been great. As we begin to wind things down, I would like to now invite for some closing remarks Opeyemi Alamina to deliver votes of thanks and closing remarks.
Thank you everyone for being here today. Distinguished guests, on behalf of the staff and management of Cordros Capital, I want to say a very big thank you for making out time out of your busy schedules to be here with us today. There's a quote that goes, alone you can do so little, but together you can do so much more. It is your unwavering support and your collaboration with Cordros Capital that has brought us thus far, enabling us to achieve many results as we've done. And we promise you that we're going to continue to do better as a company, as your clients, and as collaborators. A big thank you to all our speakers for how far you've come. A big thank you to the management. A big thank you to the staff and every single person that has worked to make this event a success. I would like to remind us of our brand promise as a company. Our promise is to continue to work passionately to deliver exceptional value to you and all your businesses. Thank you once again for being here, and I hope to see you next year, healthy and with more money to spend. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I really like the way she ended it there. More money. So we have been guided with the economic outlook. Hopefully we can take advantage of the opportunities that are opening up. And then we'll add layers of security like insurance and so forth. I think it's been a great time spent. And thank you so much to everyone for joining us today. Lunch is served just over there. Please join us for that. And we do have some gifts, so please, on your way out, make sure you pick one up. Thank you so much, and we look forward to having you at the next event.